You're listening to the Empowering Process podcast with your host, Gail Kraft. Listen as she holds frank discussions around how your purpose, being present, and trusting your power impacts your life. Whether you're an entrepreneur, leader, or developing your vision, you'll find wisdom and insights you can utilize right now. Welcome your host, Gail Kraft.
Excellent. So welcome everybody. This is Gail Kraft from the Empowering Process podcast. And I have with me this amazing woman, this badass woman, Stacy Raske. She is a best-selling Raske. Okay, right, because the A is at the end and it is not silent, neither is she. She is a best-selling author, speaker, Iraq war veteran, badass biker chick, leadership mentor, and authenticity alchemist for founders and executives ready to effortlessly elevate their lifestyle, leadership, and legacy. And that is a mouthful because she has a background that supports all of this. We're going to talk a little bit about that. And then I want to talk about your book and about your own podcast and your app and all kinds of stuff. Okay.
Absolutely. Thank you so much for having me on. I'm so excited.
That's fantastic. So fantastic. So we talked a little bit before about, we're not born into greatness. We are made or not made into greatness. It really is the choices that we make with the hand that we're dealt in life, right? Shit happens, and I'm a big believer in chaos. I love chaos, right? But sometimes it gets too overwhelming. But chaos means change, and it means there's a lesson. So, as fantastic as you are, Stacy, you didn't start that way. You started with demons and shadows and things of that nature. So let's talk a little bit about some of that, if you will.
Oh, yeah, absolutely. Well, and it's funny too, because like there's a certain amount of feeling back all the way to the beginning that we are born in our greatness, right? Like we're born in our absolute most amazing divine truth of who we are. And anytime we have the opportunity to return to that, right? Like that's really shining brightly. And really being in our power and purpose and opening ourselves up to the pleasure and prosperity in life. So, it's like, oh yeah, the more I return to self in that way, the greater I become. But right, the big buts. Well, no, we'll eliminate the big but and we'll just say and the most powerful lessons that have allowed me to share, deliver, connect, communicate, empathize in the way that I do comes from the deviation from that through the life experiences and the traumas that I've had and all of those powerful life lessons to earn the right to share my story, to share my wisdom, because that's where it came from, right? Forged in the fire of shit.
What else can you say? I used to say that I'm a phoenix because I burn and then rise. And then one day I got sick and tired of burning and rising. And right. I'm like, you know what? I'm going to ride the dragon. Phoenix, you can ride beside us, but I'm on the dragon, right? And the fire comes from the dragon and it doesn't burn me anymore. Right. So that's like a metaphor for things that were finally shifting in my life. And it takes bravery. So congratulations. It takes awareness, so maybe we'll get to touch a little bit on your spirituality as well. Mm-hmm. But what were some of the things that were holding you back, and what happened that it finally clicked that this isn't going to work for me anymore?
Yeah, in many ways, it starts with generational programming, right? So long before I came into my family, there were already storylines at play that influenced the emotional availability of people in our family and in our house. And in my craving for deeper connection and communication and attention, because I was so aware and so emotionally and energetically available at a very early age. My need for that to be met was created or expressed through achievement and people pleasing very, very, very early on. The mask went on. Right. And, and I even remember how strong it was right at 6 years old, right when the ego kicks in and my own identity kicks in, how intense it was, where the receiving of everything around me, just the wall went up, just boop, there it was, big change, mask went on. And so it really was all about striving for the external validation, the connection, the appreciation, the attention, all of the stuff. And it was just constantly chasing that. So, fast forward of doing that over a lifetime, it was this progressive rejection of self for this external need that was really never meeting the inner need. And the more that I chased that, the more I deviated from my truth, and it eventually hit the big wall right at the end of 2014 in my rock bottom moment. And it was the buildup and this accumulation of the more I played the role of who I should be in my life, listening to the prescribed pathway of this is what you do. You finish high school, you go to college, you get a degree, you get a safe job, corporate career that provides income and benefits. And along the way, you get married and you buy stuff and, just all the things that is sort of the prescribed American dream. And the more I followed that, the more it became a prison. And the more I rejected myself, the more that pain built inside me. And I avoided it by numbing out. And I spent a lifetime of numbing out, by focusing on other people, like project friends, rescue project guys, lots of those relationships, jobs that I hated, and always dimming my light. Food was a big one, working all the time, drugs, alcohol, social media, television, anything. I mean, even self-harm, I had eating disorders and just all of these different ways that I was trying to control externally because I lacked my own internal safety and sense of belonging to self.
And so many women, and I don't want to discount men because men go through this as well. But for me, so there's a but, and for me, right, those experiences and broad stroke experiences are things that I can 110% relate to. And every woman client that I've had, or even podcaster that I've had a conversation with, can 110% relate to. This is your role, and this is where you stay, and this is what you can expect from your life, even though it's not in alignment with who you are. So let's talk a little bit about that alignment and what that means.
Absolutely. Absolutely. I feel like there is this deep internal knowing of who we are. And we also make choices to deviate from that based on those, again, like that external validation, to fit into a group, to follow, what our parents prescribed for us, to, be accepted in the social norms, because, right, we've had those experiences of rejection. And so that deep fear of rejection. And the more that I chose those things from a place of fear, because that's really all it is, right? It's that fear of rejection. And obviously in my journey, discovering that fear is not the real motivator. Fear is the emotion that we act upon, but what creates the fear is the deepest, deepest, deepest shame. Shame drives everything, all of it. Like, come on.
Oh my God. Oh my God. And that shame, at least for
Mm-hmm.
me, shame is a good hider.
Oh yeah.
Oh my God. If you asked me, do you have shame? I would say, no shame, no guilt, no. Right. And it's there.
Always, right.
Always.
And it's the deepest, deepest, deepest stuff that we put up the wall and hide even from ourselves. And see, that was the biggest thing, was being willing to be radically honest with myself, radically responsible, to own the fact that everything was a choice that I made and created that led up to that rock bottom moment. And it was really owning who I was being and how far out of alignment that was with me. You know, what lights me up, who I desire to be when I'm shining brightly, and really bringing my most present and playful and joyful self to my life when I experience fulfillment, when I give and receive love openly, right? All of those things were the experience for me of being in alignment. And I had not experienced any of that for years before that rock bottom moment.
And so talk about the people who you scared to death when this happened, right? Right. And comments like, so, and I still get, oh, you shouldn't be doing that. I'm like, says who? From who? Says I shouldn't be doing you? You're not in control of me. So what are some of the things that you faced that were like trying to put you back into that little box that you belonged in?
So what was really hard was, in my world at that time, especially, that I leaned in, I got honest. I said, I'm done. I'm throwing in the towel. I'm trying to control anything other than myself.
Mm-hmm.
And when I did that, I was the trailblazer in my world. I did not have any friends or any family, nor know anyone making radical changes in the core of who they are. You know, everybody did the superficial shit, like, let me go to the gym, let me lose some weight, you know, maybe make some dietary changes or whatever. But
or take a 3-day workshop and think that's going to matter.
Oh my God, right? Right, like that's a whole nother episode.
We can do that.
Right. You know, are the people who like to read the books or go to the workshops and love to talk a big game, but never implement anything, you know, but there was nobody in my world. So it was really being that trailblazer, and that was hard. So in many ways, and not having the skill of boundaries, I didn't know what that was. So it was very all or nothing. Basically, I had to really put everyone in my world quite far on the outside in order to learn how to be with me and to show up for me. It wasn't healthy and it wasn't balanced. And I learned a lot along the way, because that was definitely not the best way to do it. Yet I'm here today and it worked. But there was, I mean, in my husband was supportive, because, you know, I hid a lot, but he knew way more about what was happening with me than he even let on. And he was way more worried about me than he let on. But he was very supportive that I was getting better and doing better for me, in the sense of focusing on me. And the big but there was, as I began to make changes, that forced him to have to change. And that was not okay or a happy thing for him, because misery loves company. We were very codependent, and engaged in a lot of the same self-sabotaging behaviors. And we would do it together. And a lot of our relationship was built on that.
Right.
So when I start showing up for me and making those healthy changes, it really shifted in a negative way for a while, right? The dynamics within our relationship.
Right.
And it trickled outwards with some of the other relationships as well. I mean, very quickly I started losing friends. Very quickly, it was, minding some of those familial relationships. And even not far into my journey, I basically had to, my mom and I went to my therapist's office and we had a conversation where it's like, guess what? We're breaking up. We're breaking up for a while because the new stuff's getting in the way of healing old stuff. And we came to that agreement, and we basically didn't have any interaction for like a year and a half.
Yeah.
So sometimes it's those tough places to be, especially when you are that person leading the way. Like now, my mom and my husband are leaning into their journeys and making changes, and theirs will be faster and easier because I've already blazed the trail and paved the way within our collective, so it'll be easier for them.
Yeah. So yeah, what I've experienced, I have a lot of friends that are like gone, but I also have old ones that are popping back in. Right. And I'm hearing things like, your demons were the same as mine, because I'm putting my demons out there.
Yeah.
Right. And I'm like, yeah, I know. And they're ready to talk about it. Right. And to face them, this journey. And I use the word journey, Stacy, because you're not healed. It is a journey. And there's more and more that comes up over time. And at least my experience has been, I do soul work as well. And we've lived other lives, and we weren't always good in those lives, right? And so we are carrying some of that weight with us, and recognizing and forgiving those experiences as well as the current experience. It is all so energetically intertwined, so you've lost some friends, you rebuilt some new friends, and then you decided to go even bigger, right? And really bold and literally badass. And so let's talk about being brave enough to go bold and badass, and what inspired you and what motivates you to keep going.
It's funny. Like, a lot of people always ask me, especially with the book, right? They're like, were you always thinking about writing a book? What inspired you to write the book? I was like, look, a few months before I started writing my book, that was not even on my radar. I mean, people had always said, like, you've had such an interesting life, you should write a book, but like, whatever. But it was being led through a visualization with my business coach at the time at an event. And it was just stepping into your highest self, highest purpose. What are you doing? And then just being open to receive the vision of what that looks like. And the vision that I saw was myself walking off of a stage, going to the back of the room, and a woman walking up to me, bawling her eyes out, and is like, "Oh my God, your book changed my life." And I'm like, "What book?" What book? Okay. So, but it was funny because at the time I'd already owned enough of my story that, like, I was sharing my story a lot more on social media and, live video trainings and stuff like that. So I was already in that mindset of, I have had a crazy fucked up life, not more or less than anybody else, because it's never a competition. However, I've learned so much from it. It would be doing a disservice to the experiences and the lessons if I did not share it, because sharing my story is not about me. It's about telling other people's stories through my own.
Right.
And it's an opportunity to share the lessons and help them shortcut their journey. And so I was like, okay, cool. Let's do the book. Do the book.
You think it's so easy.
And it's so funny because, as everything is just beautifully divine and the way the universe maps everything out, that day, I met the woman who invited me to an event and connected me 2 weeks later with the woman who would be my writing coach. Like, everything was just perfect. Like, from that day, like, what? So awesome. And so I started writing my book, and it was really interesting being in that space of being present with the stories, right? Being really present with the stories and being willing to share them in that way. And there's something about putting it out in print that really is like, guess what? Mask is off. Mask is off. The
It's
veil
out
is
there
lifted.
forever.
It's out there, right? Everyone's like, here you go. And there was such a beautiful healing to that, and a release of so much, that from then on, there's this powerful shift in how I show up, how I share my stories, my speaking, my brand, my business, because all of a sudden it's like, oh, hey, by the way, let me bring in the fact that I'm an Iraq war veteran. Let me bring in the fact that I'm a badass biker chick, right? Like, I mean, there's pictures of me and my motorcycle in the book, and all of it. It was stuff that I was not bringing into my business and my brand before that. And it was like, no, you know what? I am a personal brand. And it is about all of me, not just certain pieces.
And we could talk forever, Stacy. That is all of the goddesses within, right? We have so many archetypes of who we are, that when someone says like that little spiel, that's just like not even a top layer of who you are, right? That little intro, that's just like, okay, so this is the woman that we're going to talk to, but we're going to get deeper than that, because we are so many different things, right? So in this experience of shedding yourself and sharing yourself and growing, talk about some of the people that you've impacted and some of the things that you're doing now because of that.
It is truly amazing. I mean, I feel like it's one of the best experiences you can have when it feels so effortless, just showing up and being yourself, and that impacting and influencing people. I think we're so quick to undervalue the things that feel good and feel easy, because we've got that paradigm that says success must be hard. And that's been a big one for me, being a high performer, right? Shifting out of that achiever mentality into allowing effortless to become my standard as a leader, as someone who's influential and impactful, that it can feel good and be effortless. But like, that's our zone of genius. It's the stuff that feels easy and effortless, like just do you. Right. And so that is some of the greatest reward, when it's just being myself in that way. And that is enough as it is to truly impact and influence people to be better, to do better. Whether it's one meeting, one conversation, or it's clients that I work with for years. And, you just become so intimately involved in their story, and they just show up and shine. And I love that ripple effect. I mean, I think, healers and impact-driven people and service providers, I mean, that's the thing, right? Is that ripple effect outwards is so rewarding. Mm-hmm. And it is as equally rewarding as those moments of really being fully present, savoring the moment, and feeling that rampage of gratitude for something so seemingly small, in my life, whether it's a conversation, whether it's a moment with myself, or, doing something simple, but being able to be so fulfilled by those moments, and really appreciating that I didn't miss it because of the old programming.
Yes.
Right? Like, and I love using the food stuff, right? It's the chewing on it and savoring it and marinating and engaging the senses and, like the luscious moments of like simple stuff, whether it's the cat purr or dog kisses or, just falling asleep snuggling with my husband or, just when you feel your heart so full that it's going to burst with the abundance and you're just like, oh, it's so good.
I know it's and you words can't explain that sensation.
Mm-mm.
There's just no way. So I have an energetic word that is the energy that I strive for every morning, and it's called delicious. So
did you say delicious?
Delicious.
Oh, delicious. Yes,
delicious,
I love it.
Right?
Delicious. Yeah.
Delicious. And I had a client about a year ago that we were looking for a word for her, and hers was food as well. And we looked for a word that described biting into a peach and the juiciness of that peach running down her face and down her body. And it was so sensual and so sexy and so hot, but that's where her energy was coming from, right? That is who she is and who she was hiding from all this time for some reason. And she was in such joy. So when we find that word, whether it's, juicy and delicious or whatever the word is, that just gets you to that place of, I want to say deliciousness. It really is that place, right?
It is, right? All that beautiful sacral energy.
Right. So that's a we could have another conversation all around that as well. Yeah. Right.
Yeah.
So one of the things that I noticed about you is that you are unapologetically spiritual as well. Mm-hmm. And for me, that is incredibly important. And there is a difference between being spiritual and being religious. And I searched for that my entire life. And when I found it, it was home. Mm. So talk to me about how you got on that journey.
No, that was a lot of that building my relationship with myself.
Right.
Was connecting to that part of myself that I lost a connection to when, around 6 years old. And I didn't understand in the world that I grew up in as a kid that there was a difference between religion and spirituality and that whole energetics piece, because those were conversations we didn't have. And I experienced a lot of instability within the different churches and religious organizations, and even experienced some church trauma as a kid in a very formidable time of middle school, early teen years, that kind of pubescent period when everything in your entire life is just really difficult and awkward.
And it's major.
Yeah. So for me, I ended up responding to that trauma in deep rejection by just, again, throwing another wall up, because that's what I knew how to do, because I had no boundaries. So I threw up a wall and pretty much rejected all religion, especially Christianity. And I didn't understand that spirituality and that connection within was something totally separate. So I was just disconnected from all of it.
Right.
And going through my healing journey over the last 5-6 years, from my rock bottom moment, it wasn't just the physical stuff like losing 100 pounds, getting off all my meds, healing all my chronic conditions. It wasn't just the external things like saving my marriage, starting a business and stuff like that, but it was really building a relationship with myself and this deep connection and unlocking those parts that I hid away, both the shadow pieces, but also the light right?
You need
Like,
them both. It's balance.
you need them both. And,
Right.
and I was rejecting both and didn't realize I was rejecting both. Right. And so it's been an interesting journey of connecting to both sides of that. I mean, I'm an intuitive healer. My biggest strengths are being able to really hold safe space for others to connect to their emotional space, and that, sort of paving the way for them to do that. And it's been a process for me to lead by example and go through my own growth and my own healing journey to be able to do that for myself,
Right.
and to do it effortlessly. I feel like I remember in the early days of coaching and mentoring where it was very draining for me because I was still in that old system of rescue and fix and sacrifice for service, where now it is in just simply showing up. And as long as I'm doing the self-care and taking care of myself and really connected to me and having that dialogue and understanding where I am at physically, emotionally, and energetically, that is enough. I don't have to do anything.
And that is, I want to say the word miracle, but if that is a miracle of awakening, I think, right? Like I told you, I do soul work. And what I do is I thought, what is that gift that you got the day you were created, that soul was created? All of us think nothing of it because it's our gift. So it's easy. And so we don't think anything of it, right? And it's like, yeah, whatever. And try the hard stuff, right? Meanwhile, this little voice in the back of our head is going, hello, right? It doesn't have to be that hard. Hello, right? And talk about loving what you do. What is that? So many people work. Oh, that is a 4-letter word, right? You relish what you do. So talk about the joy of loving your day-to-day activities. We won't call it WORK.
Right. But there's a fine balance too, because it is easy for someone such as myself, because, I can be in this super woo, lovey, emotional, energetic space, yet I am very much in that alpha energy. So that high sensitivity is balanced by a high sensation seeking. So the drive is there. So it's easy for me to go to hustle, especially when it's camouflaged with such fulfillment. Right. And I feel like so many people who are called to be service providers and healers struggle with that. It's easy to overwork, overdo, overgive, because what we do feels so good and is so fulfilling. And so it's being mindful of like, well, guess what? That can turn into a new method of avoidance of ourselves. And because now we're still working all the time and not fully disconnecting. And I went through this myself, where the hardest area for me in my life still is my marriage. It is the most triggering. It's the most teaching. It is the most challenging for me because that role requires next levels of vulnerability, because that is my intimate space. Right. That's with the person who's known me for 20 years and has seen me at my worst. He knows all the different things, right? And that requires the deepest levels of vulnerability. And he's that mirror reflection back to me of where I'm not being vulnerable and honest with myself. Mm-hmm. That's different from work. Work is easy. Being of service in that way is easy. Even being vulnerable with my clients, because, there's still a certain level they're not getting access to, because that's just being wise as a professional and as a leader. Right. So for me, I found myself not fully disconnecting from work or being overly available or doing things longer, because that being engaging in my marriage, where when it feels hard, right? It triggers the not safe. So let me be over here in my business, doing these things and helping others, not focusing on what I really need.
Because it feels so good.
Because it feels so good, right? So it's been a journey of really having conscious balance and radical personal responsibility. So it's being responsible for me, being responsible for myself as a leader in my business, which means delegating more so I can spend more time doing the self-care that my mind, body, and soul need. Right? That's the best investment I can do.
That, that's where people's money should go. I absolutely agree. And what I've observed as far as relationships that are where both parties are going through the self-development process, I've seen some amazing partnerships because they are safe enough to say in here, oh, that's not who you are, and I don't think that's who you want to be at the moment. You're not showing up as the full you that I know you can be.
Mm-hmm.
Those are hard words to hear, but if you are safe with that other partner, because you can say the same, and you respond, and you can stop and say, well, wait a minute, let me see if that's true. Let me check in on myself. Oh, drat, it is. Right? It really is an awesome, it's another layer of self-development because you really can't escape for long from the inner you. Yeah. And just sometimes, does it feel like you're working on you all the time and you just want to break?
Yes, but, and the big but here will be when I feel that way, it's that reminder, hey, you do need a break, which means you've been leaning in too much without balancing the rest or the ease or the play, the step back, right? Because again, we can lean in and do the, grow and learn and do all the stuff, but with expansion, we also need integration time. We need to rest. And so for me, it's like literally today, I'm paying for a surprise trip to take my husband to an island and hang out on the beach for a week because we need it, because I need some integration time from all the big expansion I've been doing.
Right. And it's been a lot.
Yeah. And I need more play, right? It's needing more play. I was literally found, I can't even remember if it's Netflix or whatever streaming service it is, has episodes of The Joy of Painting with Bob Ross. And I started binging on that. I'm like, and I am re-inspired to start painting again, which I love to do. And I haven't done it. And I'm like, there you go. Thank you, universe, for the reminder. And now I'm going to buy all the Bob Ross kits and start playing with oils because I've never done oil painting. And why not? And why then not? I was inspired as well to start learning how to play the saxophone again. That was the instrument I played when I was a kid. I loved it.
I love the sound of a sax. Oh,
it's so sexy.
It is.
It's like literally like auditory orgasm. I love it.
Well, for me, it's that and the flute, the two of them. They bring me to different places. Interesting, because I met with a client this week, and she's talking about what to do with retirement, right? It's not for a few years yet, but smart enough to, if you want to live a long life, you better still have goals. You better still have a purpose. You better still have a reason other than a job to get up. And so we did some work on that. And I said, listen, I just want you to think about this for a minute. Grandma Moses started painting at 70. She goes, oh my God, you're right. I said, so whatever it is you want to do, doesn't matter how old you are, when you're ready to start, I'm here to help. Right? Yeah. So yeah, go for the painting. Who cares?
Yeah. I mean, I love it. I've done it my whole life off and on. And it's just one of those creative outlets that I feel good when I'm creating something like that.
Right.
it's amazing. And it's just so fun. And yeah, I was like, nope, there we go. I need that stuff. That is just me having an opportunity to access those parts of myself in a free way, right? It's my inner child. It's every single time I go back to those images, right? When they're like, visualize yourself at your most aligned, joyful, safest, happiest time in your life. It's like, oh, 6 years old, sitting by myself, drawing a picture, painting something or whatever. Like that is literally the greatest joy I can have.
And then that's the place that you go to. For me, it's on the swing at the park. So I will go and find a swing and sometimes just swing for the heck of it and to play. One more thing before we wrap this up. When we spoke early on, you mentioned doing a TV series.
Mm-hmm.
So let's touch on that a little bit. How exciting is that?
Mm-hmm. Yeah, it was really interesting. The television show is called 4 Days to Save the World. I'm on season 2. Season 1 actually launches this Labor Day on tons of different streaming services. And what was really amazing about it is just, I mean, television itself is just kind of cool to, I mean, there's something, right? Just like author, right? There's something like we think, oh, you're an author. How cool, right? We sort of elevate this idea of these things. So it's cool to have experience like the behind the scenes of like, you know, how long filming days to get the lighting right and the sound right and just like all the things. And we've got reshoots scheduled in like December or January for things like, okay, great. But what the most amazing part of the experience for me was really the people, the amazing people that I got to meet on set, because they brought together the most phenomenal people. And the premise of the show is so impact driven. And it really is 4 days to save the world. You get to be on a team with 10 other people that you've never met before. And you have 4 days to create an economically viable business to solve one of the United Nations top world crises. So we're talking about pandemic, cancer, climate change, racism, homelessness, poverty, hunger, cyberbullying. And then ours was women's empowerment. Oh, suicide was another one, right? Like there were so many. I said cancer. And ours was women's empowerment. And the reason I chose women's empowerment is because empowering women affects all the rest. If you empower women, you help pull people out of homelessness, poverty, suicide. Health improves. All this stuff improves. So
women are nurturers, right? They're the caretakers of the earth, right? They're the seers, right? They can foresee the future because they have the ability. I have the ability to see what's going on now and project, well, this is where we're going to go if we stay on this path. And all we have to do is tweak right here, not a major tweak, and you change that trajectory tremendously, right? And that's innate in being a woman, right? So I can't wait. I will add that to the series of credits. So if people wanted to get in touch with you, Stacy, in a variety of ways, what would they need to do other than me and sending you a message like, hey, this is how we know each other. We really don't, but I want to meet you.
Absolutely. So the central hub to find me is stacyraske.com. I always tell people, if you want if you want to have access to all of my content in your phone, download my InFLOWential app. And it's available on all devices. Then my podcast is there, my free resources is there, and the links to all my social media and everything else, as well as communities on there. So
that's fantastic. And I think I'm going to download it.
Perfect. Yeah. And the link to my book is there. But if you would like to search my book, it's called Be a Boss and Fire That Bitch. Quiet your inner critic and finally believe you're good enough. And it's available on Amazon.
It is. I went up there, and I will probably put a link there for people so that they can contact you, because you are a badass, and not in, it has a different word for me, or a different meaning for me. It's not a masculine sense.
Mm-mm,
It
not at
is
all.
not at all. It's just embracing the strength of being feminine and being a woman, and just glorying in it. And I'm so glad that I got to meet you. Thank you so much, Stacy. Again, this is Gail Craft from the Empowering Process podcast. And definitely reach out to Stacy. I will be leaving you additional information. Read it. Go get her stuff. She's worth it. Bye-bye, everyone.
Thank you for listening to the Empowering Process podcast. Be sure to visit Gail at gailcraft.com to learn more about how she serves thought leaders, entrepreneurs, and goal seekers. And remember, if you like this broadcast, be sure to share and subscribe so you don't miss an episode.